Hello there, I'm Thundaga, and welcome to my How to Make a Pokemon Game tutorial series. This series will cover all of the essential info that you need to make a Pokemon game in RPG Maker and Pokemon Essentials. In this episode, we'll be looking at adding new music and sound effects to our game. First, we'll review all of the audio folders for our game's music and sound effects, and which audio files should go where. After that, we'll discuss some of the best places to download new music and sound effects for our game. Then, we'll talk about the optimal audio file format to use and how we can convert our audio files into that format. After that, we'll touch on some of the ways that you can change which music and sound effects play in your game. And at the end, we'll discuss how you can easily edit any song and make that song loop for your game. With all that said, let's get into it. The audio files for our game will always be located within one of 4 folders. To find these folders, go to the root folder of your game and then open the audio folder. From here, we can see those 4 folders, which are BGM, BGS, ME, and SE. BGM is background music, so that's the music that we'll hear in our game when we're walking around or battling. BGS is background sounds, so ambient sounds such as rain. These can play at the same time as BGM to produce some interesting layered audio. ME are sound effects that pause the current BGM and BGS while playing. For example, when you get a badge, the music behind stops and then resumes. SE are sound effects that do not pause the BGM. These play at the same time, and an example would be cut for cutting a small tree. Of these 4 folders, I would say that BGM, ME, and SE are frequently used, and BGS is rarely used. Now, let's look at some places where we can download new music and sound effects to put into our game's audio folders. First, and my favorite, is the Endless Pre-Looped Music Library. This is a fantastic resource made by Endless with contributions by YT Crackerwatt and some other weird guy, where entire Pokemon game soundtracks have been converted into the OGG format with proper loop points set up in all of the songs. If you keep scrolling down, you can see that there's even some spin-off games below, such as XD Gale of Darkness. That soundtrack, as well as all of the others, has some real jamming tunes in it. Now, why is it important that these songs are looped? What does looping even mean? Looping is a process where you can set up points in a song where the song will repeat what's inside of the loop once it reaches that point. This allows us to seamlessly loop audio in our game and prevent situations where songs sound like they fade out and then restart. There are a lot of games out there with unlooped audio, and that can create situations that sound like this. As you could probably hear, that battle song had a fade out, and then it sounded like it started again from the start. This is something that will never happen in your game if you use the Endless's pre-looped music library. All songs that can be looped have been looped for your usage. This library also contains all the sound effects from the games too, if you ever want those for your game. For example, obtaining an item from Pokémon X and Y. To start downloading from a soundtrack, simply click on the game that you wish to download from, so in our case, Pokémon X and Y. From here, if you want to download any individual song, what you could do is right-click on it and select Download, or you can click on the Download button along the top bar of the screen. If you want to download the entire soundtrack all at once, or a chunk of the soundtrack, what you could do is press Ctrl-A to select everything, or click and drag to select a chunk, and then hit Download. This will automatically prepare a zip file of all of your selected files, and then download them together in a neat little package. And look here, that zip file contains all of the audio files that I had selected when I hit download. Looping audio sounds pretty sweet, right? Well, stick around because later we'll look at how we can set up loop points in any song. Next on my list of favorite music download sites is KH Insider. KH Insider is a great site that houses a ton of soundtracks from different games. If we go to the album search bar here along the left side of the screen and type in Pokémon, then we can search for all Pokémon soundtracks. And check it out, there are a lot. Holy moly, this is a lot of Pokémon music. We could search for anything here though. I know the Persona franchise has a lot of really good music too, so let's search Persona and see what they've got. There's a song that I really like from the Persona 4 Golden soundtrack, so what we can do is click that, and now we can see all of the songs from that soundtrack. The song that I like and want to put in our game is Specialist, which is song number 27 right here. If we want, we can click on the play button here to listen to a preview of that song. The previews are pretty loud though, so thankfully there's a pause button up here. At any time, you can also click to scrub to different points in the song, and you can also skip forward and backward through the track list, or choose to shuffle. You can also adjust the volume here, but it defaults to max, so most of the time when I hit play, I do blow my ears out. At any time, if you want to download a track, what you can do is just left-click it to go to that track's individual page. On the page will be a click here to download as MP3. What you can do is right-click and do Save Link As to begin saving it as an MP3. Let's make sure that we're now saving this to our game's audio BGM folder. And I want to call this Persona 4 Specialist. There we go. We need to be careful when we use MP3 files in our game though. Sometimes MP3s don't work in-game, since RPG Maker can have a hard time loading them. If it's a long MP3 that's a big file, then there's a good chance you'll have issues. If we want to test it, what we can do is go to the top bar here and select Sound Test. Now let's scroll through the list and find our song, Persona 4 Specialist. Let's hit play and see if it even loads. Oh, listen to that, the MP3 itself is actually not working with our RPG Maker game. This means that if we go into our map settings, so let's go Route 1 Map Properties, if we set this from Route 1 and we change it to Persona 4 Specialist, then we won't be able to hear our music in-game. And just like that, we're in the game, but there's no music. The game audio is working. I can hear myself opening and closing the menu. But yeah, the MP3 just won't load. Thankfully, there's a better audio file format that we can use that always loads properly, called OGG. And pretty soon, we'll be covering how we can convert an MP3 into an OGG. To convert an audio file from MP3 to OGG, I recommend using Audacity. Audacity is an awesome free program that can be used to edit audio files. A download link for Audacity will be in the description. We'll be using this later for looping too, so I strongly recommend checking out Audacity. With Audacity running, you can press File, Open, or Ctrl-O to begin opening an audio file. As you can see, I already have our game's BGM folder open, so let's scroll down and find the song we just downloaded. There it is, Persona 4 Specialist. Let's hit Open to open this song in Audacity. From here, we can see the whole song and the waveform of the song. That's these kind of like blue lines here. You can click and drag to make selections, and then you can choose to either delete selections, or let's press Ctrl-Z to undo that. What you can do is apply effects to selections. Let's not worry about that right now though. Instead, let's just focus on converting our file into an OGG. Thankfully, this is extremely easy to do. All you need to do is select File, Export, Export as OGG. Let's make sure we're selecting our games folder, then go into Audio BGM. We can also change the file name here, so let's just do Persona 4 Specialist _OGG, so that way we're guaranteed to know the difference. You can see here the save as type is OGG Vorbis Files. OGG Vorbis is the full name, but everyone just calls it OGG for short. Underneath this is also the quality option. Sometimes this can default to like 5, but I just default it to a high number. I make sure that I'm at 10 or 9, usually just 10. We want to go high quality for our song. Then all we need to do is hit save, and then what this will do is open the edit metadata tags window. We don't need to do anything with these just yet, so from here we can just hit OK, and then it will begin exporting our file as an OGG. And now it's done. Let's go back into our game's sound test now and track down Persona 4 Specialist OGG, and now let's hit play. Ooh! It's pretty loud though, so if we want to play it in our game, let's go to like 50%. Ooh, we got some jammin' tunes on this map now. I think we can delete the MP3 now, since it's no use to us anymore, since it doesn't even play in our game. Now, let's look at some of the different ways that we can play new music and sound effects in our game. As we already covered earlier, the easiest way to play new BGM is to go to your map, right-click Map Properties, and then change the Auto Change BGM. We can also easily play audio with events. On the second event page, if we go to Insert Event Commands, on the second event page there's Play BGM, Play BGS, Play ME, and Play SE. There are also ways that we can use the PBS to control music. In metadata.txt, we can set the names of our default battle and victory BGMs, as well as the biking and surfing music. For trainers, we can also force specific intro BGM, battle BGM, and victory BGM in the trainer types PBS text file. There are a couple other methods though that we can use to change which music and sound effects trigger in our game. A cheap way that I don't recommend is to just replace that file. For example, if we know that Battle Trainer is the default trainer battle theme, then what we could do is just delete it or rename it. So in this case, we can go and rename it to Battle Trainer Backup. And then what we could do is take our song, for example, Persona 4 Specialist, and call that Battle Trainer. This isn't a great option though, since it's so easy to just instead change the metadata, so if we ever want to change that BGM, this method's not great. The same can also be done for ME or SE. For example, Berry Get. If we pick up a berry, it'll play the Berry Get sound effect. If we renamed this and made a new sound effect and called that Berry Get, then that would replace the sound effect for Berry Get. But once again, this is a cheap way of doing this, and I will show you a better way. This next method is using the scripts. Some scripts will directly reference sound effects by their name, so if we know the name of the file, we can then track down where it's used. For example, if we want to replace the Berry Get sound effect with, let's say, a reverb fart sound effect as a little prank, we can find where in the scripts Berry Get is being called and change that to use our new sound effect. As you can see, I'm very mature and I've already downloaded and placed a file called reverb fart in our game's ME folder. Now in RPG Maker, let's go and open up the script editor by selecting the script editor button here along the top bar next to the sound test and playtest buttons. Now if you're afraid of coding, don't worry, we won't be writing any new code here, and instead we'll just be editing 1 or 2 lines. What we can do is search across all of the scripts for the name of our audio file. If we press Ctrl plus Shift plus F, it'll bring up the Find in All Sections search window. What this does is search every script all at the same time. Now let's type in the name of our audio file, which we know is Berry space Get. As we can see, it looks like Berry Get is only being used twice. One on line 448 of Overworld Berry Plants, and the other on line 450 of Overworld Berry Plants. So it looks like they're using them right next to each other. What we can do is click on one of them and select Jump to then go to exactly that line in our scripts. Here we can see that this is a PB message being called. Near the start of the message is //ME and then Berry Get. What this is doing is playing the Berry Get ME at the start of the message. What we could do is go in and instead of typing in Berry Get, we could instead type reverb fart here. And for good measure, let's copy this and put it in both sections. Now, every time we pick up a berry, it should play a fart sound effect instead. That's pretty great. One thing we could also do is instead of //ME, we could do /SE to play sound effects. This scripting method is great because you can track down any sound effect by their name and find where they're being triggered in your game, and then just change the name of the file that's being played. Now let's hit apply to save our changes and then go into game and listen to our new sound effects. Real quickly, let's also copy a berry plant from the Route 1 Base Essentials map, and then go paste a couple in our new map. I also added a patch of dirt underneath, so it looks pretty nice. All right, let's grab a berry and listen to our new sound effects. Wow. That sure is quite the upgrade, huh? Okay, let's pick up another berry. Oh boy. Oh yeah. Now that is powerful stuff right there. Okay, I think our game is at a 10 out of 10 right about now. Alright, now let's learn how to loop a song. It's surprisingly easy, and in my personal opinion, it's kind of fun and relaxing. To begin looping a song, let's first open up Audacity. Then, let's open up the song we want to loop. So in our case, let's go to our game's BGM folder, and let's try looping Persona 4 Specialist. What we want to do now is begin looking and listening for points in the waveform that repeat. As you get more comfortable doing this, you can start picking up on some patterns. As a quick heads up, I press the space key on my keyboard to begin playing the song from my selection point. I use this a lot. So looking at the song, it looks like this part here kind of matches this part here later in the song. Let's listen to them both. I think we've got a good candidate for our loop. At any time, you can hold down the control key and zoom in with your scroll bar, and then what we can do is, let's take a look at right here. Let's keep on zooming in, and let's try to find the highest peak of this little point right here. There we go. Now let's try to go to this same exact point on the other part of the song. Just as a heads up, some songs are easy to loop and some of them are hard, depending on their layout. This one shouldn't be too bad though. At any time, we can also hold down Shift and scroll, and this allows us to kind of move forward and backward through the song. What you can do is click and drag to get a rough approximation of the selection, or you can do what I like to do, which is click on one point, then hold down the control key and click on another point to then select there. What we can then do is also control and then click again to bring in that selection. I use this for easy adjustments. What control click does, it also works with Shift, is it brings in the selection that's closest to your click. The way I said that was kind of confusing, but essentially this allows you to very easily adjust your selection. Whichever edge of the selection we're the closest to, it'll bring that closer to our click. So right now we're closest to the left edge of the selection, so if we hold Shift and click, what we can do is bring the left edge and adjust that. I use this all the time. This looks to be kind of similar to the waveform that we had on the other side of the song too. So let's try to match it up and grab the top point there. Okay, I think this looks like we may have a good loop. Be very careful not to click without holding Shift or Control, by the way, since this will clear the current selection. I do this sometimes on accident and I hate it. Now that we think we have a good selection, let's press the L key on our keyboard to enable looping play mode. You can tell that looping play is on once the top bar of the selection here is dark gray. Now when we press space to listen to our song, it'll start at the beginning of the loop and then repeat at the end of the loop. What we can do is also just click on the timeline above to go towards the end of the song. I think that was a perfect loop. Let's go! First try. Now that we have a nice sounding loop, what we need to do is write down the start of our loop as well as the length of our loop. Along the bottom of the Audacity window, make sure that you're viewing the start and length of selection. I think it defaults to start and end, so you want to make sure that this is start and length. After that, make sure to click on the arrow along the right edge of these numbers underneath, because we want to make sure that we're viewing samples. I believe this defaults to seconds, but for our case, we need to use samples. So just to reiterate, start and length of selection and samples. When we export this file, we will be setting two values in the metadata. These two values are loop start and loop length. Now, let's write these values down. I like to write them down in a notepad and then copy and paste them later. So the start of our selection looks like 001, 190, and then 710. And then the length of the selection is 002, 945, 144. Every samples value should have 9 numbers, and just for consistency's sake, I like to write them all down so every value has the same number of characters. We could always just exclude these zeros at the start, but I like to keep them in for consistency's sake. Now that we have the two values that we need for our loop, let's export the file. What we can do is File, and then Export as OGG. Now let's call our file Persona 4 Specialist Looped, so that way, once again, we can tell the difference. Now, in the metadata tags, this will be where we need to use our loop start and loop length. I always just hit clear to first wipe all of the previous metadata tags, and then I hit add, so now we have 2 empty rows here along the bottom. In these 2 rows, we need to add loop start and then the loop start value, and then loop length and the loop length value. So let's type them in right now. Loop start, and then loop length. We need to make sure there are no typos here. The loop won't work if you accidentally misspell this as like lop start, for example. So we have our loop start and loop length. Now let's go and copy and paste these values in. So the loop start is that value and the loop length is this value. Right on, now that's looking good. I think we're all good to just hit OK and export this as a looped OGG. Before we hop in game, I just want to talk to you about a couple useful keyboard commands that I use a lot while I'm looping in Audacity. The first one is one we've already mentioned, and it's Control-O. Control-O to open a new file. The next one is L to toggle looping play on and off. The next one is Shift-L. What Shift-L does will set the loop play zone to the current selection. So if we select like this and then press Shift-L, it will now loop this zone instead. This is really useful. And the last one is Control-Shift-E. I use Control-Shift-E to export audio instead of doing File, Export, Export OGG. If you use Control-Shift-E, you can then export and then just make sure you have OGG Vorbis selected. I like it, it's a lot faster, and I think it's very convenient. Alright, now let's set it so our map uses Persona 4 Specialist Looped. Let's crank up the volume a little bit, and now let's listen to it in-game. Now that was a great sounding loop. If you want to download that looped OGG for Persona 4 Specialist, I've got a download link for it in the description. And that does it for this tutorial on adding new music and sound effects to your game. Thank you so much for watching. If you learned something from this tutorial, please remember to like and subscribe. To access my tutorial website, please check the link in the video description. As a reminder, this tutorial is for Pokemon Essentials V20, so if a newer version is released in the future, such as V21, it is possible that the layout or functionality of some of the things that I mentioned could be changed. In general though, this series should get you to where you need to go when it comes to making your own Pokemon fan game. Thank you so much for watching, I hope you learned something, and I hope you have a good one. Best of luck to you in your Pokemon fan game endeavors. Bye now!